Well, hello, City Point. It's day 16 of the 21 days of awakening. And today we're going to look at a scripture out of Isaiah 53. And it says, "By his stripes we are healed." Now, we all know that verse. We've all heard it, quoted it, prayed it over people, told people to believe that. And, and because we believe that the Lord paid for our healing, just like he paid for our forgiveness of sins. And he took 39 stripes on his back, and out from that we believe that the Lord heals today. And that's a good theology that can be backed up in numerous scriptures and experiences and testimonies. But I want to expand on it and show you something about it that has to do with your life. So the basic principle is that out of the Lord's healing, or out of the Lord's wounding, the place where he was wounded, healing came forth. So I want you to think about the areas in your life where you have been wounded. And you see, when you are wounded and you come to the Lord and the Lord heals you out of the places where you have been wounded, God uses you to bring healing to other people. For example, if you've been abused as a child, out of that wounding, when God heals you in that area, it's just a very normal, common thing that he uses you to heal others who have been wounded in that area. For example, we look at like a Joyce Meyer, who was sexually abused as a young girl. She says her dad raped her over 300 times. And we know the power of Joyce's ministry, especially in healing women who have been sexually abused. And out of that wounding, God has brought great authority for healing through her life. And that's true for all of us, that in the areas we have been wounded in, God uses us, because what he got to us, he will eventually get through us to heal and extend hope for people who are walking or have walked in the same experience or similar that we have went through. So by his stripes we are healed. And by the stripes virtually in your life, and hear what I'm saying, I'm not trying to make you to be equal to Jesus in the sense that that everyone's healed because of what you did, but the reality is that people can be healed by hearing your testimony, and by faith coming arising in them by seeing what God has done in your life. And so God brings healing in the places where we have been wounded. And that's why when we go to seeking God, what God does is he brings healing to us. The prayer, the fasting, the areas that God brings alive in us are areas where God brings his healing to us, so he can get healing through us. So in that sense, what I want you to see in that is Galatians 5:1. It says this: "It was for freedom that Christ set us free." It was for freedom, and it was your freedom. Christ came to set you free so you could experience freedom. And then he wants you to live in that freedom and then minister out of that freedom to help others find freedom as well. So listen to what he says. "It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery." So you see, every battle in your life is essentially a battle over slavery or freedom. The enemy is trying to bring you into slavery. God is trying to bring you into freedom. Every area that you go after God in, and God heals you and delivers you and sets you free, he wants you to stand in it, stand firm in it. And then in that place, God's going to bring freedom, not just to you, but through you. And that's what Paul taught. That's why Paul was such a freedom minister, because Paul had been brought out of such bondage. He had been brought out of such legalism. He had been brought out of such hatred and hurtfulness to the early church. And then look what he turned around to become. Out of him, this place of healing and freedom came, and he was such a blessing to the church, the one who had been such an enemy of the church. And so we're all going to be we're all going to be tested in areas. The enemy's always going to test you to try to bring you back into bondage. The fact that you have experienced Christ doesn't mean you don't ever have to fight another battle. You have to continually stand and walk out these areas. That's why we need to continually go after God and find God's freedom and find God's ministry in our lives, so we don't find ourselves slipping back into slavery, because that's what Paul wrote the book of Galatians for, is a people who had experienced freedom were slowly backing into bondage again and getting entangled in yokes, because that's the thing. Here's the bottom line today. You're going to wear somebody's yoke. You're either going to be yoked up with the world and with Satan and his desires, or you're going to be yoked up to God and God's will and God's desires. And if a yoke represents being tied to something. It essentially brings you to a sense of being in bondage to something. Now, here's the question. Do you want to be in bondage to Satan, or would you like to be in bondage to God? Because bondage to Satan leads to death. Bondage to God leads to complete and full freedom. And I know that doesn't make sense. How does bondage lead to freedom? Well, you serve Christ and you give him everything, and then he, in a paradoxical way, gives it back to you, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Jesus said, if you lose your life for my sake, if you put yourself in complete servitude and bondage to me, you'll find your life. But if you seek to save your life, what you're going to end up doing is lose your life, because you'll end up in bondage to the enemy, who has one goal and one purpose for your life: to rob, kill, and destroy. So what's it going to be? And Jesus said it like this in Matthew 11. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And that's the entire human race. We were all under the burden of sin. We all walked that burden. We all sinned and came short of the glory of God. Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. He says, I will show you how to get out from under that heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Here's how he says you're going to do this. Take my yoke upon you and let me teach you, because I'm humble and of gentle heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. See, he's not saying you don't get a yoke. You get yoked to him, but his yoke is a light yoke. It's a freeing yoke. If you don't take his yoke, you're going to take the enemy's yoke. And his yoke is a heavy burden. It's a heavy load. It's one no one can bear up under. The way of the transgressor is hard. And, the enemy says, that Christianity is bondage. And so he points people to do your own thing and have it your way. And you do that, and it's certain death. And Jesus says, come to me, give me your life. And that's the essence of life, is that you surrender your life up and God gives it back to you. And so as we get into this is the battle. The battle's over slavery or freedom. And the key to freedom is to lay your life in God's hands. And the sure way to slavery is to try to keep your life in your hand and do with it as you will. And so in this battle, and in this decision that you make over bondage or freedom, the invitation is simple. Come to me, Jesus said. So this is why we take 21 days. We just come to him and seek him, and we're looking for ways for him to set us free in our lives. I know we look at the world, and we say the world needs to get set free. But and that's true. But the real need right now is that the church come into freedom, that the believers walk in the freedom wherewith Christ hath made us free, and not to be entangled in a yoke of bondage. And so I want to encourage you to take this last few days and press in. Give God everything that he's asking. Don't hold back. Just freely, without hesitation, lay it all out in front of him and say, here it is, Lord. Take me, take my life, take my everything. And when you yoke yourself up with him, I guarantee you're going to find complete freedom. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow for day 17.